If you're here right now watching this video, you're probably looking for something new. Maybe it's a new story game, or a new challenge, or even just to roll something other than flat defense. I know, me too. So today I'm bringing you a Honkai Star Rail guide that goes over basically everything that you could possibly need to know about the game and getting started. It's gonna be pretty lengthy and detailed, but hopefully it doesn't matter too much because I know you're just procrastinating doing something else anyways. And if you're looking for something specific, by the way, like how to level up fast or if Himiko can be your wife, there's timestamps below and chapters in the video. My name is Raxophone, and let's talk about Honkai Star Rail. As you probably already know, Honkai Star Rail is a turn-based game, meaning that you attack the enemy and then the game attacks your wallet. Every character has a speed stat and an action value calculated from that speed stat. Essentially, each character, including enemies, attack one at a time. It's not really live action like Genshin Impact, therefore you kind of have less freedom. It's also not technically open world. There are zones to explore, but everything feels a lot more linear, and you can't jump. So if you have ADHD like me, you're probably gonna have to find a new button to press. Honkai Star Rail operates off of the path system, where there are essentially 7 different classes of character. There's Erudition, the Hunt, the Destruction, the Harmony, the Nihility, the Preservation, and the Abundance. Each one of these paths specializes in something. For example, the Erudition are kinda like toddlers. They deal AoE damage. The Hunt, however, are more like my dad, high speed and single target. The Destruction are damage dealers that are a little bit slower and have more HP than the Hunt. The Harmony is buffers, the Nihility is debuffers, the Preservation are your tanky characters, and the Abundance are your dedicated healers. There are also elements in this game, but it operates on a weakness system rather than an elemental reaction system like Genshin Impact. Enemies have a toughness bar above their HP. It's that white little bar up there, and while this toughness is active, enemies have a 90% damage taken multiplier. The enemy's weakness featured above their HP signify what will deal full damage to them before toughness is taken into account. So basically, enemies can resist your damage by a lot, so you want to play to their weaknesses and break their toughness. To do that, just hit them with attacks they're weak to, and their toughness can be broken over time. When it's broken, you deal break damage, and depending on the element that you break with, there's also a secondary effect. For example, if you break with Quantum, enemies get COVID-19. The combat in this game can be super fun, and though it's not quite as free as Genshin, the puzzle element of turn-based combat makes its appeal just different. Most folks see HSR combat as extremely straightforward with 2 buttons, and for a lot of story content, it will be. But for people looking for thoughtful endgame and roguelike game modes that change your builds and comps on a regular basis, this game is going to scratch that itch. Since HSR is turn-based and enemies always have a chance to hit back, unless you take away their breathing privileges, investing in relics and making proper team comps feels almost more important for getting through the regular content of this game. A proper team composition depends on the content most of the time, but something you do want to be mindful of is that shielders and healers are very important here. You may not always use both, but unless you end up doing a high-tier speedrun, their comfort's pretty unmatched. Many players at launch are also going to severely underrate the value of building teams around skill points. Skill point management is incredibly important to maximizing your damage with a team, and if you have poor management, you might struggle to clear some of the higher end content. I know you didn't sign up for university when you clicked on this video, so I'll wrap up this section here, but I will be making more detailed combat and team videos later on, so consider subscribing for more. Next up is the worst thing, the worst part of Honkai Star Rail. You know that artifact set that you were grinding on Genshin for like 4 months for the right stats? Well, don't worry, you'll get it in Honkai Star Rail. No, I'm kidding, the system's exactly the same. You spend your resin equivalent, called Trailblaze Power, on these battles, and they reward you with relics. The relic stats are all randomized, including substats. However, there is one thing that makes Honkai Star Rail system a little tiny bit better than Genshin's, and it's that there's an item that lets you create a specific relic with a specific main stat. So now, instead of farming 4 months for the perfect main and substats, you only have to farm 4 months for the perfect substat. Honkai Star Rail operates on a 6 relic system, standard 2 to 4 piece sets and 2 planar ornaments. These 2 to 4 piece sets are similar to Genshin. They have stat boosts on the 2 piece, and on the 4 piece they usually have a little bit more complex conditional effects. Oh, and planar ornaments also have their own 2 piece effects. In exchange for you not being able to run an off piece set like in Genshin Impact, they introduced higher level farming nodes to where you can guarantee multiple 5 stars and 0 3-star artifact drops, with the only downside being that you're still gonna roll flat defense substats. The head can only be flat HP, the hands can only be flat attack, the body is like a Genshin circlet piece. It can have HP %, attack %, defense %, crit rate, crit damage, outgoing healing, and effect hit rate. Lastly, for the average Hoyoverse game fan, they have feet. The main stats can be HP percent, attack percent, defense percent, break effect percent, and speed. Now, as for the planar ornaments, you have the planar sphere, which can have HP percent, attack percent, defense percent, and elemental damage boost, making this more similar to your goblet piece in Genshin Impact. Finally, the link rope can have HP percent, attack percent, defense percent, break effect percent, and energy regen rate percent, which functions similarly to energy recharge in Genshin Impact. There's a bunch of new stats to Honkai Star Rail. You have effect hit rate, effect resistance, break effect, and speed. Effect hit rate just refers to your chance to land a debuff on an enemy. Effect resistance decreases your odds of getting debuffed. Break effect increases the amount of damage you deal when you break an enemy's toughness, including damage over time and action delay, and speed affects the order and frequency of your attacks. And quick note on the weakness break, it scales with level and has its own separate formula, and you can sort of think of it as filling the elemental mastery slot on Honkai Star Rail. So at this point, you might be wondering,
Rex, why don't we just build speed for every character?
Well, I'm about to go over that, but it's kind of way too dank, so here's your warning. To build characters in Honkai Star Rail, first you need to look at what relic set to look for, which depends on the character and their scaling. So you'll need to check what your character scales off of, which most of the time is attack, unless it's not attack and it's actually HP for healers or defense for preservation, but sometimes those stats aren't even what you want on them. So next, after you decide on the set, you have to once again look at your character scaling to decide what sort of main stats you want. If a character does damage and scales that attack, then you want to give them an attack body piece unless it's possible for you to get balanced crit stats, in which case you want to build crit, and then on your feet you'd want to build speed like every other turn-based game, except you don't, because not every character even benefits from speed that much because enemies have different speeds. So in order to optimize, you have to figure out if you even do more damage with an extra attack or two, or just building attack anyways, but you also have to look at if that character takes a skill point to attack, because then your skill point economy might be thrown off, but hey, at least you can guarantee that you want the elemental damage ornament, right? All this just to say that each character is still going to have their own build, and it gets more complex than just attack, speed, and elemental damage bonus. The spreads on stats are way different in this game. Crit is harder to build for, and we may even find it's not optimal for a lot of characters. Energy regen is also less effective in this game than Genshin due to the difficulty of actually increasing the stat by a significant enough margin to get value. But there are some characters that still benefit from it. So if you're looking for a game where you're rewarded for building characters right based on the specific content you're in, Honkai Star Rail can do that for you. And if you want to know how to build characters in Honkai Star Rail, consider subscribing to my channel because I'll be making guides for it to help you out. On another note, you will actually need to level up relics in this game early on. The thing is, since you don't have reactions and free open combat to carry you, and because enemies actually hit you back, HP and defense have a lot more purpose, and you'll definitely want to raise your stats. I'm not saying to force HP and defense though. In fact, early on for your damage dealers, the first thing that I would do when you have relics is level the hands first, because the flat stat will give you a lot of value early on. You'll also be farming relics at a lower level for the same reason. Unfortunately, it's a lot harder to carry yourself or get carried into AR 45 or Trailblazer rank 45, and you will have to level up some of your relics just to progress in the game. So while I do advise that you save some of your Trailblaze power refills for when you get up to a higher level and can farm relics more efficiently, spending it early on isn't a huge issue. But okay, we talked about the relic system, let's talk about the weapon system in Honkai Star Rail. Weapons in Honkai Star Rail are called Lightcones. They're Lightcones. Basically, these all have their own stats and effects, and rather than you not being able to equip a claymore on a catalyst user like in Genshin Impact, you can put any light cone on any character. Now with that said, if you put a preservation class light cone on a destruction class character, they won't get the light cone's extra effect, which can be massively detrimental since their effects do matter. The main question a lot of people have asked me is how important are light cones to their characters in this game? And so naturally, I'm going to dodge the question as to not piss people off about gacha systems. Look at this Susong. Isn't she great? I love Susong. Look at her. She's trying her best to figure it all out. We could all use a little bit of that energy. Fine, I'll tell you. Light cones are really important. Similarly to Honkai Impact 3rd, a lot of them have effects that are specific to the character they're paired with. It doesn't specify by name what characters use certain light cones, but the effects make it pretty clear. For example, Seela's light cone gives you a stack of different buffs based on the equipped character's speed. Seela has an above average speed stat, and the buffs it gives are great for her kit specifically. Now with that said, any hunt type character can take advantage of this light cone, especially since it does have higher base stats as a 5-star, and speed is a stat that you may end up building on them. But it is very clearly meant for Seela, and she will take significantly more advantage of it than other characters. I will say though, and this is very important, on the bright side, there are very general 4 and 5-star light cones that can be obtained by free-to-play players, and these are good for most characters in their class. So far, I haven't found any characters that feel super dysfunctional without their weapon, often, but I will say some of them really help a lot. As a general tip for new players, I wouldn't immediately superimpose your rare Lightcones unless you have 3 of the same one, because it can be better to have multiple of the same 4 or 5 star than a slightly buffed one. Trust me, shuffling around gear is not fun, and you're gonna eventually need 8 characters to be fully geared out when you get to the higher levels of content.
But if you close your eyes.
How long does it take to get a character fully kitted out? Well, that depends on your RNG, so When games are new, the daily grind is kind of fun. But believe me, I know the feeling of making dinner, doing the dishes, sitting down to watch a new Oshinoko episode, and remembering that you'd still have Genshin dailies to do. Sometimes dailies do feel like a chore. Well, Honkai Star Rail takes a different approach to your daily missions. The challenges in this are less intrusive. Things like synthesize material 1 time, or use technique 2 times, inflict weakness break 5 times, or use an ultimate to deal the final blow 1 time. You have 1 daily quest that you can do, but you don't have to complete all of the daily challenges to max out your rewards. You also have stamina or resin in this game called Trailblaze Power, and it's used for the same thing it is in other gacha games. You can use it in exchange for relic challenges, level up materials, and weekly boss challenges. It caps at 180 to use a day, but the kicker in this game is that since it's turn-based, there's an auto battle functionality. You literally don't have to put in any effort. Once your teams are strong enough, you can just hit the play button and go do your taxes or watch a actual video or something. If you wanted to, you could even do your Genshin dailies at the same time. There's content that you can't auto battle, but basically everything that's farmable does have that feature, which respects your time much more than some other games that I'm not gonna name. For those of you with time to spend, however, Honkai Star Rail has endgame content that auto battle won't make the cut for a lot of the time. In this game, they renamed Spiral Abyss to Forgotten Hall, probably because once you're able to beat it, you've forgotten all your social skills. It's basically a time challenge, but instead of a timer, it's based on how many turn cycles go by. It's a lot of fun, and it'll scratch the endgame itch pretty good. There's also a roguelite mode called Simulated Universe, which is where you'll spend all of your time trying to make Herta a good character. In it, you'll get buffs based on the path you choose, and you use them to try and complete a challenging dungeon and boss fight. The rewards for it are planar ornaments, and I won't lie, it's probably some of the most fun I've had with a roguelite. Both of these game modes have great rewards, including Lightcones, so I recommend doing them even if they're optional. There's also challenges you can find throughout the map that have gimmicks similar to Genshin domains. They're fun to play through once on each level, and they give you some nice rewards too. Because this game has no open world, they kind of have to have more things to do in it. And Hoyo actually did pretty well with this one. Star Rail functions a lot like many other gacha games in the industry, with the one main difference being that it's actually fun to play. When you're trying to level up at the beginning of the game, the best way to actually level is to literally just play the game. Just do it. Enjoy the quests. Okay, but outside of that, if you're looking for something to do, check out your guide under the Operation Briefing tab. There's a bunch of short progression things you can do to gain some Trailblazing XP. On top of that, don't forget your daily training for Trailblazing XP once you get it unlocked. Lastly, spending all of your Trailblaze power every day will help with leveling up a ton. It might sound kind of straightforward, but a lot of people who are newer to gacha games may just not spend it all. When you're really early on, just focus on leveling materials under golden calyxes in the survival index. As you progress through the story, you're gonna gain access to a lot of things, such as weekly bosses that will give you materials to craft your own Lightcones, as well as some shops like the Herta Space Station shop and the Bellabug shop that both reward you for spending on the in-game materials. Think of them like sigil shops in Genshin Impact. As mentioned before, Simulated Universe and Forgotten Hall also have some pretty good rewards, and there's even ways to get 5-star Lightcones as a free-to-play. But honestly, this video is already too long. Go watch the other one I just made. Oh, and Serval is absolutely broken. Build that character. Now, one last thing about Honkai Star Rail is that there's a discounted new player banner that gives you a guaranteed 5-star character within 50 warps and gives you a 10 pull for the price of 8. I definitely say this is worth doing, but I would only recommend spending Star Rail passes that you earn in-game and not your Stellar Jades, since you'll eventually get to those 50 pulls anyways, and it can be harder to get event Star Rail passes, the special ones that let you roll on the event characters, so save your Stellar Jades, those are precious. Also, the event characters are about the same as Genshin. 50-50 to get the character, 90 pity, and pity carries through the banners. There's way too many things to cover in Honkai Star Rail for one video, so I'm gonna be making separate and more specific videos on things like combat, best characters to invest in, best Lightcones, etc. So if you wanna see those, subscribe to my channel for like the 5th time this video. And thanks for watching. Come check out my Twitch if you wanna hang out and talk Star Rail and learn a whole bunch of things, and I'll catch you guys next time.